So Donald Trump's been in office for a little over a week, and already the world is going to hell in a handbasket. He did briefly pause his golfing trip to trigger a 12-hour trade war with a key Latin America ally, and then to pass this widespread, unilateral, wildly illegal freeze on all federal spending, which, among other things, has effectively ripped healthcare away from 70 to 80 million people because of a freeze on Medicaid. To unpack this shit show, I have brought in, well, two of my favorite people, Piers Morgan's two arch-enemies and the co-hosts of America Unhinged. I've got Francesca Fiorentini of the Bituation Room podcast and friend of the show, Wajahat Ali of the Left Hook Substack and Democracy-ish. Francesca, Waj, what's going on?
Oof. I mean, I'm like tweeting again. That's how bad today has been, right? I'm like out there on the Nazi platform, sorry, alleged. And it's crazy. I would have thought that Donald Trump, in order to cut spending, would certainly cut the Pentagon's budget by now instead of going after, malnourished infants. But that's just me thinking he was a real populist or whatever.
Well, and we're going to talk about that because I've been tweeting this out a bit, somewhat tongue in cheek. I have been assured by some of the most reputable commentators in the space that all these excessive moves will be checked by the fervent, populist movement of the MAGA base. I'm not seeing it yet, but we'll see what happens. Waj, what about
the parliamentarian think? Doesn't the Senate parliamentarian say, "Hey, that's a constitutional crisis. You're not a king. The power of the purse belongs to Congress. Stop that, Donald Trump."
He said from his locker with his underwear over his head. Yeah,
exactly.
Help me, help. That's for the Senate parliamentarian. Stuff there by Pete Hegseth, our new Secretary of Defense.
Oh, my God. And there's so much to unpack there because I just saw, literally while we were waiting on Francesca, I saw that Hegseth has just pulled former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley's security detail, a guy who is being inundated with death threats as a consequence for, standing up to Donald Trump and not risking a nuclear war with China. So, folks, there's a lot to unpack. Let's start with America Unhinged. I think America is. I think it is, guys. I think you can probably even shut the show down. Like, the verdict is out.
Verdict is out. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say,
Francesca.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So, like, how is prepping for today's episode been?
Insane. We'll figure it out. But no, it's, look, I think that it's just too much news for one person to handle. And so that's why Wajahat and I are co-hosting. But also, hopefully, I think people are tuning out because it's just like a fire hose of information and insanity. And so hopefully the idea, and as a stand-up comic, that's also my hope, is like, how do I digest this? How do I make it funny? How do I make it relatable? How can we have, as Waj and I have, like, a moment of hope on our show at the end of every show to say that there is a fight back. It's not just sort of taking this Project 2025 insanity at face value, even if the Democrats aren't the ones to lead that fight. People, their communities, they are going to be fighting back. So yeah, but it is unhinged. Waj,
No, it's a good point. It's because we're tracking the first 100 days of Trump's second administration. We're live Tuesday and Thursday, 8 p.m. So find us on Zeteo's YouTube channel. And in addition to processing the news, right, because there's so much, so our job is to distill it, give it context, give it commentary, informed opinions. We actually, yes, have facts, fact checkers, a producer, but also, in addition to hope, also some levity, and levity for the sake of catharsis. People need a release, not for the sake of us like, oh, everything's fine. No, we're very aware there's a comet heading to Earth. We're telling you to look up, but you have to find moments of resistance, a plan, a strategy, and mocking and ridiculing tyrants has always been a tried and tested method of fighting back. So we try to incorporate, facts, very informed, very specific commentary. We don't mince our words. We don't bend the knee. We don't kiss the ring. And we also, Josiah, we call out not just Republicans and MAGA, but we'll call out Democrats. We'll call out the 1% corporations, right? And we'll also praise people. People are doing the good stuff. We'll give them a shout out, right? So I think people are missing that type of honesty and that honest critique. People don't like being lied to. Like, if there's a comet coming in the sky, no one wants to, what do you say? It'll be fine, folks. And it's like, it won't be fine. But at the same time, I think people stop at that, like it's all over. And if you give
Yes.
people just fear and apathy, then what happens? You get distracted, you get overwhelmed, you get confused, and that's how fascists win.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. You both said a lot there that's worth unpacking. Number one, you say that you actually employ a fact checker. My understanding is that the prevailing strategy is to fire all the fact checkers. So
Sure.
I can't believe Mehdi is approaching this very differently, that you guys are keeping fact checkers on payroll. Zuckerberg has taken a wildly different approach. I will also say that in this moment, it seems like congressional and elected Democrats are also adopting a very different approach to pushing back. They're fighting back, Francesca and Waj, by confirming Donald Trump's nominees like Marco Rubio and others as well. They're also holding press conferences a week after the particular event, like the January 6 pardons occur. They're moving at what I call Dick Durbin speed. I'm hoping, yeah, which is really discouraging. I'm hoping that they find their AOC.
It's
I mean, yeah.
1987. It's RoboCop 1987 speed. Like if I was a criminal, I'd be like, it's RoboCop, run.
Yeah, like the Jan Sixers are already out committing other crimes. That's how slow the Democrats are moving. And I also feel like, back to like why Zeteo has been so important and why I'm so glad we're working with them is really because Mehdi and Waj and I are kind of like mainstream news refugees in some ways. Mehdi was effectively let go for daring to actually ask hard questions of Israeli officials about the ongoing, I would call, genocide in Gaza. And it's really important to not have someone who's whispering down your, in your earpiece saying, "Hey, go easy on the powerful. We're trying to win with them. We need these contracts. We don't want to get demonetized. We want this and that." And it's like, that I think is really, really critical. As much as I hate how fractious our media is, as much as I wish that the mainstream news were better, as much as I do think so many journalists still do excellent reporting at places like NBC and CNN. Sadly, the people who are supposed to digest the news, the pundits, the evening shows, the primetime shows, really are more interested in not telling you like that the real war here is a class war, that what's really going on is the oligarchs versus all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's unpack a little bit of that as well, because one of the things that I talk about a lot on my channel is the asymmetry of the institutional power in this country. Certainly, Democratic or liberal or progressive policies tend to be more popular, but right now, the right wing and their proxies in the Republican Party, they've got the White House, they've got the Senate, they've got the House, they've got a majority of state legislatures, they've got a supermajority on the Supreme Court. The biggest mainstream news network, as we know, is Fox, not CNN or MSNBC. They're for the right. The rest of mainstream media tends to grade the right on a curve. Alternate media has bent towards the right for years. The Daily Wire and its constituent creators, Steven Crowder, Joe Rogan, all the others. Now you've got the power of the oligarchy there. Zuckerberg has bent the knee. You have Elon Musk. He says that he's just giving his heart to people. I noticed the cupped finger, the cupped thumb, which really leads me to believe that was something else entirely. But you have all this power stacked on one side. And I know you all end your episodes with a little bit of hope, but like real talk, is it, I'm a cynic by nature. Waj, Francesca, are you all cynics or are you like optimists? Like how do you all approach this?
I'm a pragmatist. Like I'm the person that will tell you that the comet is coming, but then I will do my best to prepare or try to stop the comet from coming. So I'm a pragmatist, but I'm also an optimist. And I have to be optimist and hopeful because I'm a dad and I have kids. So if I tap out through apathy, which is very comforting, then I'm basically forfeiting my role as Hodor. And I've just come to accept that I'm going to be Hodor, right? Like my job is just to hold up the door to let my kids escape. An excellent Game of Thrones reference, by the way.
Oh, that's mwah.
But that's look, Danielle and I talk about this also. We have another. Francesca has like 18 shows. I have 2 shows. We have another. But Danielle, talk about this, the long walk, right? And if I may just roll with me for a second. Be a bit Muslim-y for a second. Just roll with me for a second. Oh, you non-believer.
We'll allow it.
Burn in the hellfire. What? Sorry. But Moses never got to the promised land. Moses led his people out, but he never got to the promised land. In Islam, we don't think he ever made it to Jerusalem, right? Like he was the guy who was supposed to make it, but he didn't. And so Danielle and I talk about this at our age. Maybe our role in the story is we won't make it, but our job is to like point the way. right? Our job is to pave the road. Our job is to like plant the seeds. And then maybe if we're lucky, we'll enjoy the fruit, but maybe which will be picked by oh yeah, sorry, the undocumented are gone. So it'll just be withering on the vines and the trees in Bakersfield. But I
Republican representative from Florida. What's his name? He was picking berries.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah. He was doing the hard work, but that's my take on it, Josiah. And I don't want to depress anyone that way, but that's the realist and the optimist in me that I might not make it there, but maybe inshallah my kids can make it there. And
Yeah.
I have one life, we have limited time. I will never bend the knee to a fascist or to Trump. So with whatever time I got left, I'll do what I can to figuratively punch a bully in the mouth and make fun of him.
Well, before I throw it over to Francesca, I'm curious, like, because I'm following the metaphor here. Is it possible? Sometimes I'm worried that Moses was walking in circles for decades, because I almost wonder if that's what we're doing. But Francesca, go ahead.
We're in quicksand. We hit the quicksand. We're falling backwards.
Yeah.
I don't know anything biblical or anything about religion, but I'm like, I definitely know the MLK quote of, I may not live to see the promised land, which is like, I can't say it without wanting to cry, but I'm a total optimist. Listen, I was like an anti-war organizer back in 2003 fighting against the Iraq War. Before that, fighting against what now they call globalism, we call the global justice movement, which was saying, hey, capital can't fly around the world searching for the poorest workforce to exploit. You've got to support American workers here, union workers here, don't trample, union and environmental rights around the world. And that wasn't a nativist thing, that was a progressive thing. And so I've been an organizer and I'm like, man, I got to get back to my activist roots. So I think we all have to think actually beyond being pundits, beyond listening, beyond being consumers. What are you doing in your own neighborhood, in your own community with, just even in your immediate vicinity? I think we are so lacking in community. And so I feel like it's like that is rebuilding that is going to really be pivotal to withstanding what is coming at us right now.
So Josiah, that was me. I mean, just real quick, I cut my teeth also in the post 9/11 climate. I was a 21-year-old senior at UC Berkeley and thrust, without any training into kind of a leadership role where we had to like just
wait, Waj, I'm doing the math on this. When we met, you said you were 32 years old, and I'm thinking this math isn't mathing, buddy.
I'm a broken middle-aged man. I have never hid my age. I'm 44 with one foot in the grave. But with the post 9/11, look, post 9/11, we did everything, and we still in a way failed. But we still fought the good fight. And because of that organizing and because of those connections, it took a few years, but eventually we saw the fruits of that. So it's one of those things where I realized, okay, we failed in the short term. We couldn't stop the war, right? I think UC Berkeley, we were there with the first preventive march against the war because we knew what was going to happen.
Right.
And everything that we fought for, we were right. We were on the right side of history about everything. We don't get the flowers. We never will. But there's something good knowing that I fought the good fight. I was on the right side of history. I never bent the knee. And then those coalitions and those communities that Francesca's talking about, they grew into something beautiful that helped push us forward. And I think we can recreate that, inshallah.
It makes me really, I'm just like, this is the problem, Josiah, is that Waj and I like to talk a lot. And so you're going to ask us a question. We're just going to keep on bop, bop, bop. And Zeteo's only, we only have 20 minutes. Zeteo's only an hour. But I will say this, Waj, I think social movements have done a lot in this country. I think they're the reason Barack Hussein Obama became president.
Absolutely.
Hillary Clinton voted for the Iraq War, and Barack was like, I wouldn't have. So that was massive. He did get us out of out of Iraq. Yes, he expanded in Afghanistan, but you know what I'm saying? On and on and on. You saw the George Floyd protests in 2020, which we're experiencing the backlash of now. But that was the reason that Joe Biden was elected. That energy, the data bears this out. Even though Biden, once in office, did nothing for the criminal justice reform movement, nor did Barack Obama truly, and again, the Democratic Party truly did not break with their militarism. And so this is what I'm saying. Social movements have been there. We need to still be being there. But this party that we've been lobbying, because of course they're the only ones who actually listen, Republicans are a goner, they have not met us halfway. They have not picked up the mantle, even though we've given them so many victories. So this is where I'm at with my broader analysis is like, yes, we need social movements, but God damn it, we need people in power who can actually make our demands policy.
Yeah, so I've talked with Waj in the past repeatedly. So this question, I guess, is for you, Francesca. So one of the concerns that I have about the outcome of this particular election is my concern is that Democrats will learn the wrong lesson. And here's my position on this. So one of the reasons why I respect Waj and Mehdi and you is because all three of you have been outspoken critics of the Biden administration, but you don't indulge false equivalence. You don't pretend that Democrats and Republicans are the same or that Biden was the same as Trump. And you have celebrated President Biden's domestic legislative accomplishments. My concern is that given that that was the furthest we've come from neoliberalism in decades, are you concerned that Democrats are going to go, oh, fuck this, we're going to run right back towards neoliberalism because Biden and his then proxy Harris lost the election?
That's a really good question. Here's what I will say. I think people's backs are against the wall right now. And you saw that in the election cycle when in 2016, especially, the Zuckerbergs of the world, these sort of wannabe like, liberal tech billionaires didn't want to be seen associating with MAGA. And because late stage capitalism does what it does, and more people are living paycheck to paycheck, and there's more and more concentration of wealth, I think everyone is kind of like, not metaphorically, kind of gun to your head, which side are you on? And I think the tech oligarchs are like, oh, we're definitely on the billionaires class side. And I think too many Democrats still think that either number one, they're straight up pick the billionaire class side, or number two, they think that they can keep on, not choosing a side. And that I think is the problem. And Joe Biden, even in some of the anti-neoliberal or the ways that he turned the ship away from neoliberal economic policies, still didn't choose a side. I think you heard Bernie Sanders say this very eloquently, that he needed an enemy to name an enemy. Trump names an enemy. Obviously, it's the wrong enemy, trans kids, immigrants. But why not the 1%? Why not the corporate class? No one likes their boss. I mean, come on, except for
Francesca,
we love Mehdi.
Let's give the former president some credit. He absolutely did identify the enemy 2 days before he left office in that farewell address. Yeah,
Thank you. Just like,
yeah. I mean, somebody should have been like a little bit earlier, Mr. President.
He said, "Welcome." Jeez.
Oh,
I know.
boy.
But we've talked about this real quick, Josiah. It's one of the situations, I think we're going to see it happen much sooner than later, is that the people are getting fed up. And especially as Trump ramps up his attacks, literally doing whatever he promised to do in Project 2025. They literally wrote the Bond villain plot, gave it on a slideshow. It's like the Bond villain going in the first 10 minutes of the movie before the naked golden ladies. And like, are you James Bond? Here's my plot. And James Bond's like, oh, I was about to get on okay. And then we still said like, I wonder what they're going to do.
No, I just want to say while you were, this was actually bombshell news. We actually got footage of a senior staff meeting at the White House, and Stephen Miller was stroking a white Persian before he zapped a subordinate. So, I mean, yeah, it really is like comic book villain ridiculousness from this administration.
But what I was saying is, I think the people are going to get fed up sooner than later. I'm seeing a growing rage. He won by only plurality. And if those Democrats are not stepping up to, if you will, tackle this righteous rage, to channel it through action, rhetoric, they're literally going to be expired. I think they're going to be retired. I think people are done with them. And the people that we give a shout out to, and like I said, we were really fair. AOC is channeling this. Raskin sometimes channels this. Jasmine Crockett does. But if you have these somnambulists like come out like Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin, like, whoa, like people are like, bro, I don't have Medicaid. Like we're gonna die. Like, and you're having a press conference tomorrow. Like, have a press conference today, motherfucker.
Yeah, I know. Yes. Listen, I think tomorrow is pretty quick by Durbin standards. I've been seeing like week-long stuff. Yeah, I've got this like fantasy scenario of oversight being led by AOC. You have Jamie Raskin leading House Judiciary and Sheldon Whitehouse in the Senate Judiciary Committee. And like my heart goes a little pitter-patter.
I am a big White House fan.
Are you?
Want to say, yeah, like Silver Fox of the Senate, right? Yeah, I love
he is on it. I've interviewed him a couple of times, and he's always on Supreme Court corruption because fuck this court. I think I asked him, I feel like Democrats lost a big opportunity to campaign on Supreme Court reform. I think that what's interesting is I was at the DNC and I had a conversation with, and I'm going to ask you about this, Francesca, either your present or former colleague, Cenk Uygur, and I asked him about Supreme Court reform. And he said, even though he supports Supreme Court reform, he didn't think Democrats should campaign on it because he thought it might be a bit politically volatile. My concern is I feel like we're going to get used to the corruption. It's kind of like after the Dobbs decision, which, overturned reproductive rights. I feel like a lot of Democratic strategists felt, oh, this energy will carry us not just through the midterms, but like 2024, 2026. But the American people can get used to basically fucking anything, right? Supreme Court corruption, women, dying in hospitals because of these regressive trigger laws. And so I feel like you got to strike while the iron is hot. And White House has that energy. AOC has that energy. But unfortunately, a lot of the Democratic leadership doesn't. I mentioned you all were Piers Morgan's arch enemy. So I've got a couple of questions about that. Will you two ever appear on Piers Morgan at the same time? Or is that just too much firepower? And
once.
Wait, you both were?
Yeah, we were in person. It was even worse than that.
Did I miss this shit? I got the eyes of a hawk. When was this?
It's not as exciting because the camera was sort of bird's eye, but yes, we were in the same room with Piers. And to answer your optimist or pessimist or cynic conversation, the fact that we even go on that show proves we are both optimists. If nothing else than to just dunk a little bit on Piers Morgan, which I like to do. Watch sometimes still tries to get a point out, but which bless him.
Yeah, I think Jessica just goes in full troll mode. She goes,
I'm just like,
I know how this is ending.
Yes.
No, I think it's great. I just want to say for the record, I don't know if anybody ever gives you guys shit about that, but never listen to them. Always go on because he has a huge platform. And if you don't show up or Mehdi doesn't show up or Waj doesn't show up, then he's going to pick like Tucker Carlson.
Leftist straw man to say trans rights are human rights.
Precisely. He's going to do what Tucker Carlson used to do and get just some sort of Bobo doll to knock down. Yeah.
That's true. There's always sort of a Lindy Lee. I mean, Lindy Lee's switch sides, but you know what I'm saying? There's always some sort of weirdo who can be like, is this the leftist you could find? What?
It's like Piers Morgan. I'm liberal. They're like, bro, no, you're not. He's like, but I am.
I'm what are you, Piers?
What are you?
I'm basically Bill Maher. Have you watched Bill Maher in the last 20 years? The most reactionary MFer out there.
Yeah, I will say this. I wish if Piers could crib one thing from Bill Maher, at the very least, Maher will still not do a both sides when it comes to elected Democrats and elected Republicans. He gets too caught up in the niche culture war bullshit. But Piers has a hard time different. Oh, did you see what this random, liberal said on Twitter versus what Donald Trump, the most powerful man in the world, is saying and doing every damn day? I'm sorry, Waj, go ahead.
But what I was saying is Piers, especially after the election, he knows where the wind is blowing. And so when I used to go on his show, it used to be for Gaza a lot. And on Gaza, he kind of agrees with me, which is why he stays quiet. If you look at foreign issues, even with UK and Tommy Robinson, he'll stay quiet because he knows, right? In America, with American politics, he sees where the wind is blowing. He wants to get that interview with Donald Trump. He's friends with Donald Trump. So especially in the past 2 months, I would say, the entire show, the framing of literally Donald Trump could go kill someone and say, I killed that person. That was wrong. And then Piers would go, but why are Democrats to blame for Donald Trump?
Exactly. Didn't Democrats push him to the edge to commit this murder? And you're like, what? The framing is completely bad faith. And so, yes, it's sort of, Waj and I are always like, should we do this? Should we not do it? That's why I like to just dunk on them and make fun of them. But it's true that sometimes you can get a point out. But weirdly, he is he's so far up Trump's ass. He's just got a little home there. It's very cute. There's a garden and a picket fence, the whole thing. So he's just very fragile when it comes to Trump. But I don't know, Waj, if we stopped going on, maybe if they'd stop getting clicks and views, I don't know.
And listen, you will
it's
always.
It's a good question because do we, Francesca, myself, Mehdi, Brian, a few others, are we helping him build his audience? Because now he has one of the top 10 YouTube shows. Yeah. And if we leave, and I will say this, so because Jazana and I, the first time we talked, when I heard you were on my show, you said, watch, keep doing it. I will say this, when I travel, people do recognize me from that show. And some people are like, hey, man, you told them. But at the same time, I'm helping this man get rich by bad faith framing, which is so egregious post-Trump's win that we just come on as human piñatas. Yes. And it's exhausting. It's like,
yes,
you don't know. It's like, imagine getting to the ring. It's versus one. and you got to bob and duck and weave, and I got to be on my game. I can't make a mistake, and I don't even make mistakes, but they pounce on you. Then I got to find a way to pivot. It's draining.
No,
And then you're
listen,
like, why do I have to
I'm
just do
sorry.
this?
I disagree. I think you guys are doing the right thing because as we've seen, Joe Rogan or Ben Shapiro, they will very rarely have liberals or progressives on to challenge them, and they're also in the top 10. Piers would do very well without you, and I think that you all being there, Brian, Mehdi, and others as well, Luke Beasley, I think it provides some sort of pushback.
Yeah.
And I think it's just good. I think you guys are.
I think you're
what
right.
you do
I think,
good.
I mean, I'm of two minds, but yes, I think it just, there's a time and place. I have to give it a month break between each appearance.
because
at
it's so soul crushing, I imagine.
You also have to stay there for an hour. You're just sitting there for an hour and you're like, are you serious? And then suddenly some random new guest will come on and be like, oh, they have to leave in 15 minutes. I was like, bitch, I gotta leave in 15 minutes. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't want to be here. One time I was just like, let me go. I was doing this at them because I just wanted to leave. This is like at 8 a.m. Pacific time. I gotta get, whatever. I got my kid to daycare. Ridiculous.
No. Do they do to me what they do to me? I think they're like, oh, Waj is like good TV. You can just roll with it. I rarely get the guest panelists that they tell me. So I'll wake up and like 30 minutes before, oh yeah, 3 brand new people, the QAnon shaman. I'm like, what?
I know.
It's like, it's almost like those old school improv skills come back, but you also have to realize.
You did improv? God, that really checks out. That really checks out.
You didn't watch Whose Waj Is It Anyway?
I was actually pretty good. Our team was good, but what I was saying is not only is it that hour that's exhausting, you have to realize once you get on, you put a big target on yourself.
Yes.
Because if you hit them, which we often do, we always get a good lick in. They hate people fighting back. They have the weakest knees, the glassiest of glass jaws. So it's about 3 days of hardcore hate. And Francesca gets it worse because she's a female. So she then has to deal with 3 days of like just the worst shit ever.
Yeah, no, it's pretty bad. But then you kind of duck under it like a wave, and then you come back out, and you're like, but I kind of crushed though.
You're like, what I mean? You're like, your rage sustains me. Yes.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, I just have one final question for Francesca because people did ask this when I interviewed Waj the first time to promote America Unhinged. Are you still affiliated? Do you still have some sort of relationship with the Young Turks, or is this a pivot away from it? What's going on there?
It's such a long story. No, the short story is that I'm a contractor with them. So I come on and they pay me for my appearances and that's it. And I've done that since 2016. And, I have massive disagreements with the main hosts and their takes on a lot of issues, but definitely working with Trump or the right is probably foremost among them. I have a lot of respect for Dr. Rashad Ritchie and John Iadarola, and I will still do their shows when I can. But yeah, you get I've never been full time with them, and I don't have a contract that has some sort of like number of appearances. But yeah, so Zeteo is just another feather in my cap of all the shows that I do.
It's peacocking at this point. So many feathers.
Oh my God.
It's out there.
It's wild.
Well, no, listen.
Francesca is being very nice and saying that we're poor. We work very hard.
You definitely work hard. That is for damn certain. I just got to say, I thought your interview with Cenk was amazing. It was awesome that you did what you did, especially given the business relationship. A lot of people wouldn't have done what you did, and it was really awesome.
Well, I don't like money very much, so that helps.
We're very bad capitalists.
She has a money allergy. She's like, no, damn it.
Oh, I straight up do. I've rejected many jobs because this one person was invested here and I don't like that. I'm just like, yeah.
So we're not going to expect in like 6 months a blonde Francesca Fiorentini showing up on a right-wing podcast somewhere.
With a cross right here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, big Caroline Leavitt's cross. And am I right? That was just like, I feel like the cross was carrying her,
It's the only thing she's like, this is the only thing you need to know about me is that I'm super Christian.
She's got to be careful.
Just nail yourself to it, honey.
She's got to be careful because if she brings it around Trump, it will burst into flame, or somebody will. That's why he didn't put his hand on the Bible when he swore his oath. He's like, there's a force field. I can't actually apply.
Like, how do we even explain that for all of his like Christian followers? He was and Josiah, he was supposed to sell that thing. That was a Bible he was supposed to sell, and he didn't even remember to put his effing hand on it.
He was like, yeah, he's like, so listen, I've got a new Bible here. It's right here. It's for $60. It's so it really is embarrassing.
Embarrassing.
And
I think that was God intervening. But what I'll say this as to close, and this is why it's important, is, you know, I don't know if you all have been accused of this. I've been in the game for a long time. You always get accused of selling out and this and that. But if people only knew, you know, the money is not there in the left-wing media, right? It's always been on the right wing. And especially when it comes to corporate media, even though we've had our toes in it with CNN and Francesca's had it with MSNBC and Mehdi's had it, we were always, you know, you always had to work. The refs were worked by the right wing. We always had to, like, you know, if we spoke out a little bit too much, we were silenced. I had experiences at CNN, and, you know, to do our own thing, it's truly grassroots. So what you've accomplished here, building out your platform with the subscribers, all the money, the views, you think it doesn't go a long way? It goes a long way, because we could have, maybe should have sold out years ago because we have children now. We shouldn't have sold out. But, you know, it was really easy, especially if you're a person of color, to just parrot right-wing talking points. And I literally tell people I could subsidize my life, my children's life, my grandkids' life in a month if I went down that road right now. I know exactly what to say. But then I'll also trade my soul. So I do think there's benefit in the short term and the long term to never bend the knee, to have your convictions, to have your values, to fight the good fight. There isn't much money in it in the short term, but somehow my kids are still fed. I still knock out the rent. And, you know, at this stage in my life, Francesca, I'm like, if all these mediocre right-wing people are being paid, well, why not us, damn it?
Exactly.
Well, folks, listen, you all have been really generous with your time. I'm excited to see tonight's episode. I'm big fans of you both. I look forward to chatting with you again in the future. Francesca, Waj, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll talk again soon.